Hey, well, I can't really call this a harvest video, but in some respects, the harvest has begun. I'll explain. Alright, so these are Champanel grapes. This cluster is ripe to the point that some of them are starting to shrivel a little bit, but the entire vine is different. We have uneven ripening. Some are all green, some are partly green and red. But I do have two clusters that are ripe to the point that they are raisioning a little bit. So it's not going to be all one harvest probably. I think I'm going to start taking them as they become ready. Now that doesn't mean they're wine ready, but most of my varieties will need sugar added if I'm making wine anyways. But these probably are table grape ready. So I haven't decided what I'll do with them, but I probably will freeze them for wine. So I have this cluster and this cluster. That's also, you can see a raisin on the bottom, so it's getting beyond ripe. But I will test the Brix to see what we really have here. So the trick with amateur grape growing in the backyard and in these hot climates, you have to take what you can get when you can get it. And this is the Champanel again, and this is what I picked from outside, because what I noticed is that you have such a difference in degrees of ripeness, that you have some raisins and you have some greens, maybe really no greens left, but this one has a couple greenish ones on this side, so not as much sun for this side. But you kind of have to decide, do I wait and have most of them become overripe, or I pick them when I can before the birds get to them or other critters? Just a decision has to be made, but there's really no classic, oh, it's harvest day, time to harvest all of my grapes in one shot and put them in a bin. That is not my experience so far. It's cluster by cluster. It's kind of a pain because you got to get through the net that you put up. But I'm happy to have them. I'm just being realistic that they might have to be done one at a time or one or two at a time instead of picking the entire vine worth of harvest. So, and even within the cluster, some are edible, some are not so edible, and some are beyond what you would want. And that's for table grapes. But for wine grapes, I'm probably going to use the majority of these. And, I'll give some good ones to the family if they want them. And then I'll use most of them for winemaking. And whatever's left over, if we still have some family grapes, that'll be good too. But it's tricky, but they're growing, and I'm getting some. And this is the Champanel. This variety is kind of notorious for uneven ripening. We'll see how the white varieties do. I'm having similar problems with the Catawba and actually with the Camminare Noir, but that's a little more even. But I may have to do the same, just cluster by cluster harvests. So I will check the Brix on these, the sugar content, and see what this is capable of. So not the most scientific Brix test in the world, but I'm actually pretty surprised. We got almost 19 Brix out of these Champanel. I wasn't even sure that they went that high. So we're at about 18.5, which is pretty darn good. I mean, it wouldn't require adding that much sugar if I was doing an all Champanel batch. And if I had enough of them, maybe I could get them up to 19, which is pretty reasonable for making wine without adding sugar. But this is pretty educational. That worked out well. These are the Camminare Noir, and something is damaging him. I don't know if birds are getting in here, but I'm starting to notice it more and more. And really the same thing applies. At some point you have to be realistic, and a decision might have to be made, because the ripening it's not even, and they're starting to get damaged, and some grapes will be better than no grapes, even if they're not perfect. So I'll update that later. In fact, now that I think about it, I think I'm gonna just take this little cluster here. It is it has a lot of damage on one side. It seems to be okay on the other side. It's small. It's just gonna attract other critters with the sweetness of what's broken open. And so, like the Champanel, I'm envisioning that the Camminare Noir is going to be similar. Harvest as I can and preserve as much as I can. And we'll check the Brix on these too. Alright, here's my beat up Camminare Noir cluster. It's just a little guy, still got some green on it. This side's a little riper, I guess. And let's do a Brix test on that and see how it turns out. See what we have so far. Alright, so Camminare Noir Brix test didn't do too well. Really only 15 and a half, not even 16 Brix yet. So that wouldn't even yield, without sugar, it wouldn't yield even 8% alcohol in the wine, which is not what you would want. So hopefully I don't have to do this with too many of the clusters. I just need more time. Hopefully get it up to 19, 20 would be great, but I don't know if we can do that. But anyway, that was a lot lower than those Champanel at this point. By the way, I can't do this with the Champanel because they're seedless, but the seeds on these Camminare Noir, they're not really dark as they should be when you're harvesting ripe wine grapes. They should be a lot browner, and they should be a lot easier to crunch down on. They're getting there, but this is another indicator that they're not quite ready. They should be more of a brown. They're getting darker, but this should have been one of my first clues that the seeds need to be a little darker before we get the Brix that we need. You know, since I'm doing all this, I might as well do one for the Catawba here. There's no green left on here. Might as well take it and see what it's doing. Maybe I'll just take one. Alright, here's the Catawba cluster. Beautiful. There's no green on here left. But you know, I changed my mind. Instead of taking the whole cluster, I'm going to sample a couple. Oh, there's one green one. And we'll see. I'll take one from the top and one from the bottom. And let's leave it alone. Let's do a Brix test on those two. See what we got so far. Okay, for the Catawba, we're getting close to 17. That would give us about 9% alcohol if we were to not add any sugar. That's a little better. I'm also noticing that the bags are working very well. Nothing's getting into them, and unlike the netting, and so my Catawbas are safe. I can leave them on there. I mean, they're unblemished, really looking nice. Something to think about for next year. It's more work, but it could be worth it. And just for more scientific info, these are the seeds from the Catawba. They are a little bit darker, maybe 1 Brix level darker, and they are slightly easier to crunch down on, maybe 1 Brix level easier. Make what you will of that info, but I think it's kind of interesting. Alright, well that's going to wrap this one up. It's probably going to be going something like this for the next few weeks here. A little bit of salvaging, a little bit of testing with the refractometer, my cheap little refractometer. That's a pretty cool device. It doesn't cost much, and it's pretty helpful just to know how they're doing with an actual number. So this is how it's going to go, probably with the red varieties for a while. I haven't even got into the whites for a while. They're a little more behind, and I don't know what kind of challenges they're going to have. They're just not as visual. I mean, they're all pretty much green right now, and I suppose they're going to be a little more yellowish when we're getting close, and then I can do some testing and some tasting. So everything I tried today tasted real good, by the way. So if nothing else, I'll make adjustments. I'm getting lots of grapes for the, second season in the ground. Can't complain about that. Next year's going to be bonkers, I think, because I have new plantings, and these are going to be bigger and older and more mature. And so, anyway, this is where we are so far, and post updates when I can.